दीपिका जी राइट में
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tamara Nambiar, and I will be introducing Deepika Padukone. As a celebrity, the choices she made every day were subjected to public controversy and criticism. Nonetheless, she always managed to stay strong and poised. Her formula was, be authentic, be yourself. Deepika, I have a few questions for you. When I grew up, I wanted to become an artist, a scientist, and a singer. When I read your story, you were a great badminton player but chose to become an actor. How did you choose from an actor and a badminton player?
You know, the same way that you want to be an artist and a scientist? How do you feel? You can achieve both, right? You feel like if you set your heart on something, you can do that. And then you want to do something else and you can do that too. So honestly, when I was growing up, even before I realized, I started playing professional badminton. But it's when I was a teenager, I realized that maybe this is not something that I want to continue and pursue and play professionally. And every time I watched a movie, somehow I felt like that's where I belonged. So it's my gut that told me that I wanted to transition from being an athlete to being an actor. And then I followed my gut. You know what gut is? Like your instinct, like that voice inside you that tells you what is right and what is wrong. That.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How are you?
Thanks for full disclosure, that's my daughter, and that's the longest she's listened to anyone. Can you guys hear me? The guys who said no, it's a good thing. Okay, let me try. Oh, that works. Thank you. Next, can we have Anuradha Paul, the role model, and the question that's going to be posed to her is by Anya.
What happened to the organ?
Can I see? Please, can I see? Sure. You just stay here.
Namaste. Namaskar. Oh my gosh.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Anya Ibrahim, and I've written for this book. Today, I have the honor of introducing Anuradha Pal. Her chosen journey was filled with roadblocks. She encountered discrimination for being a woman, trying to master a masculine instrument, skepticism for being young, and resistance for not hailing from a musical family. But Anuradha was not deterred. She was relentless with her discipline, training, and confidence. And I truly admire that. I have a question for Miss Anuradha Pal.
That was deliberate. Well, you know, when the one most important thing that I learned, since there's a paucity of time, I'm going straight to the point. When I went through all the discrimination, the one thing I learned was not to listen to that negativity, to focus on my goal, to focus on what I wanted to do, what my heart was telling me to do. And I knew that ultimately my passion will do the talking. And so when I went through that journey, I was dismissed at every point, I was discriminated, but my parents egged me on. Though I don't come from a musician family, they were kind enough to encourage that passion. And also, my gurus, Ustad Allah Khan, Zakir Hussain, set such exacting standards, and they basically were so uncompromising. I'll tell you a little short, an incident. I was just 15 years old when Ustad Zakir Hussain asked me to accompany him on a concert tour. And so we were traveling, and at the moment I was so excited. He called me at night and he said, "What are you doing in the morning?" And I said, "What am I doing? Getting up in the morning." So he said, "Meet me at the airport." And I went to the airport, and he had a flight ticket for him for Jaipur. And he said, "Go off to sleep." I said, "But I'm so excited, I'm traveling with you." So he said, "Well, just go to sleep." And the first thing I learned was, he said, "You're going to travel all your life, you're going to need rest. The moment you have a opportunity, go to sleep." Okay. Then I reached there, and we did this grueling tour. I was put through a drill of lots of practice and all that. Of course, earlier I had gone through 10 hours of chilla, which is called 10 hours of practice every day for 40 days, which I followed as a routine from the time I was in school. Because I wanted to ramp up before I learn from such great gurus. And so when I went on with Zakir Bhai, he tells me that, tomorrow you're going to play a concert with, you play the concert and I'm going back to Bombay. And I said, "But there are going to be eggs on my face, if I play instead of you." So he said, "Okay, stay up all night." And there was a Kathak dancer, and he said, "Sit up all night and practice with her." And I did. In this little room, I was locked up in this little room with no guidance from the master, nothing, no word. And all I had to do was learn from the beginning, whatever I had to do. The next day I performed, I kept practicing, and he kept saying he's leaving, but he didn't. Finally, in the evening, when it was time for the performance, he says, "You know what, you're not playing with the dancer, but you're playing with me." I said, "Oh, wow, great. Thanks for letting me know a whole night I was practicing with the dancer, but that's fine." So when I get to the stage, I said, "So what are you going to play?" So he said, "What's your age?" I said, "I'm 15. So, okay, so we'll play 15 beats. I said, No. I'm 16, because 16 beats is a little easier to play. So he said, "No, now the damage is done. You said you're 15, play it." And I was put right into the drill. I had never learned that tal in my life, but I was put straight into the thing, and I played. By God's blessing, I somehow managed. But there was one point where I think I didn't do as well as he expected. Obviously, I was so scared. So he put me through a huge punishment. And the punishment was go up and down all the stairs and all the things. Anyway, it was a very bad punishment. So that was one thing that I learned, how to be quick-witted that day. I learned to be quick-witted, how to be adapting to the situation. And it helped me when I play with all the great maestros now that I play with since I've been 13. I've been playing with all the great maestros, been performing since I was 10. But that helped me a lot. So I think putting yourself to that grill and making sure that you actually surrender to learning does help. Also, I think, of course, there were many incidences like that sometimes, and through my college days, I mean, I was doing crazy things. I had a very, very crazy schedule when I was in school, by the way, to answer your question. I used to get up at 5, practice, go to school, come back at 3:30. From 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, do my homework and studies. No time to play, no time to rest, no time to do anything. 6 o'clock leave for my gurus, 7 to 10. They're all the way from Juhu to Nepean Road. Travel and come. And till 11 o'clock at night, go back to my house. Again, the next day, the same drill. So I think all these things, so I personally believe that hard work and really, really focusing and being determined about what you want to achieve is really, really important and is the driving force. What also, so I mean, when you say how did I manage my time? Yes, the most important thing I would say I learned from my father was how to multitask, how to completely be focused and disciplined about everything, orderliness, timeliness, punctuality, being able to do many things. So I think all these things really, really matter. And incidentally, last, just to tell you on a very personal note, it was 2017 was a very bad year because I lost 5 family members. And in 2016, when my father got an epileptic seizure, it was just 3 hours before a major concert that I had. And when I was wheeling him into the ICU, he kept saying, go to your concert. Focus on your goal, okay? 2017, when he passed away, 3 days after that, I had a concert right here at the Sophia Baba Hall. And my mother came to encourage me in the concert, 3 days after. Last night, I had to take my mother to the ICU. I just was up all night in the hospital looking after her, and I've just come straight from the hospital here. And the only thing she told me yesterday is, you're not going to break your commitment. You're going to stand by what you did, and that is the true meaning of being a professional. These days, people think being a professional is about how you earn money. I don't think so. I think it's about how committed and dedicated you are to whatever your art is or whatever your passion is. And it's about making sure that you stand by your word and become a person of character. And that's what I truly believe is important to be able to achieve one's goals.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuradha, and we wish your mom all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For the next role model, let's have Moksha come up here, and she's going to pose her question to Brinda Somaya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Moksha Davalor. I'm 12 years old, and I have the honor of introducing our guest, Miss Brinda Somaya. So here are a couple excerpts from her story in the book. Brinda Somaya is an architect. She designs buildings. Brinda is also an urban conservationist. She protects the spaces around the new structures that she builds. In 2001, Brinda turned her attention to Badali, a little village in Gujarat that was demolished by an earthquake. Was it possible to rebuild the village exactly the way it was before the disaster? Yes, it was. Brinda did just that. So I had the honor and the opportunity to write Miss Somaya's story, and despite all my research, we came up with a couple questions for her. The first one being, I live in the US and I know you studied there, so what made you decide to move back to India and to set up your architectural firm here? And secondly, what made you decide to work publicly and volunteer to build and restore public spaces?
Well, I was just waiting outside, and one of the gentlemen there told me that I'm well dotted. So it's great to be here, and I would like to first congratulate the 3 women, Lakshmi, Rima, and Sharda, for bringing out a book for children. because this is something we all want to do and need to do desperately. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a different generation from some of the young ladies sitting here. I was in America those days. It was the 70s and 80s. And many people who went there at that time never returned. A lot of my classmates, a lot of young people, we all know that. I remember studying there, and one summer I was at Cornell Summer School, where I now happen to be a professor. And I spent the whole afternoon with a whole lot of Indian professors and their wives having lunch. And they spent the whole hour or two talking about India. And I saw myself maybe 20 years from then doing the same thing. And that's not what I wanted to do. I certainly did not want to be peripheral to any society in which I lived. So I had actually got admission to another master's degree. I went home. I went back to my university, and I called my mother and said, I'm coming home. And no regrets, because I think to live and work, in a country as rich in its culture, in its diversity, in its language, in its food, in its art and its culture, and feel that you are part of it, to me, that's the most important thing. And that's why I came home.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to round up the panel, can I have Kavya come up here and pose a question to, who are we posing the question to? Dr. Seema Rao. Dr. Seema Rao, please. Thank you.
Namaste to everyone. I'm Kavya Davalor, and I'm here to introduce Dr. Seema Rao. Seema Rao, first Indian woman commando trainer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here is a passage from her story in the book. As a child, Seema was bullied. She would cringe with a mixture of helplessness and revolt, hoping for a strength that would put her on par with the bullies. Years later, after she became a medical doctor and married, her husband introduced her to martial arts. She embraced it and began her transformation from weakness to strength. Dr. Seema Rao, I have 2 questions for you.
Yes, what are they?
Number 1, I'm 8 years old and I've seen many kids being bullied.
Okay.
I've also experienced it myself. From your story, I know that you were bullied. Can you tell me and all the other kids out there about it? Question number 2.
Yeah. Okay. First and foremost, let me say that I'm extremely happy to be here with you wonderful people. And otherwise, my life is all about commando training. I'm India's first and only woman commando trainer. Yes, I train men commandos. And thank you. And I go to the nook and corner of the country. I go to ice-clad mountains, scorching hot deserts, and dense jungles, and I train the commandos. So if you look at me, you'll wonder how I reached commando training. Well, it was not my life's design to be there. We all believe in destiny, so that's what destiny had something else in mind for me. So I started off as a doctor, but ended up training commandos of the Indian forces. I'm going to talk about my childhood because I think, certain incidents in our life change the way we think and change what we want to become. One of the incidents was way back in school. What's your age?
8.
8. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old when there was an incident in school that, changed me. There were these, girls in our class, and they were, ones who had failed the class. So they were about 2 years elder to all of us. So one day, what those girls did is they, lit some firecrackers under the desk, and one of the girls' uniform caught fire. And everybody ran helter-skelter, and there was only this girl whose uniform caught fire, and obviously she was hospitalized. And everybody was asked in the class that who was responsible for this. Nobody owned up. Now, the thing is that I am also the daughter of a freedom fighter. I was very close to my father. So I think a certain degree of righteousness is, what I had inside me, which I realized when this incident happened, and, I realized that I was the only one to tell, the staff, the teachers, that it was these girls who were responsible for that incident. Nobody else said anything, but I was the only one. I was afraid, there's no doubt about that, but somewhere I thought it was just unjust, and I thought that, people who are responsible for doing harm to somebody else should be taken to task. So that was what happened then, and of course I paid the price for that because, about a few days later, my exams were around the corner. Those girls were taken to task and they were punished. So they had to get back. So one day when the school left and we were all leaving the classroom, I was the last one to get out. And these girls cornered me in the corridor. They caught hold of my hands. They pulled my bag. They removed my journal and they tore it to pieces in front of my eyes. Now, when you're the studious type and you see your journal being torn and the exam round the corner and you know that it's going to cost you your marks. So I looked at them with disbelief, tears in my eyes, and I couldn't do anything about that. And I still remember that helplessness that I felt at that time. Years later, I would like to tell you about another incident, but this was, when I was about 17 or 18 years old. So I met this young Dr. Male. He was into martial art, and then that's when I realized that if I had to change from weakness to strength, then this was one way I could do that. So I started learning from him, and there was this incident which again changed me forever. We used to live in Chowpatty, very close by, so we used to go to the beach and we used to practice martial art. Let me say that we are a very, very bonded couple. In fact, in the forces, people call us the ideal buddy pair. The ideal buddy pair is a concept where two people are that close that I can trust my back and that nobody is going to shoot from there because of him, and the same with him. So coming back to the story, so we were training over there on the beach, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning. It was a hot, sunny day. And the beach was getting empty. It was time for us to go back. When suddenly there were a group of these, rack pickers who were passing by. And they happened to look down and see what we were doing. And they started passing lewd, demeaning remarks at me. We decided to just ignore them, continue with the training. And once we got off, they were standing at a distance, and we had to pass by from that route. So my husband said that, okay, now that those guys are there, you're going to have to face them. And saying this, he moved out of that place. I think that was very important. I thank him for that, because I think that day I decided, or I learned to fight my own battles. As I walked towards them, I was very scared. So I decided that maybe I'll just walk across and finish with the whole thing. And suddenly one of the guys came and stood in front of me. I was looking down and he was in front of me. I moved to the left, he moved in front of me. I moved to the right, he moved in front of me again. So he was obstructing my path. I was looking down and I was very scared. And slowly I looked up at him. And what
kids' minds are. And what I'd love to do next is to stitch that up with a personal favorite story of mine. And I hope this dazzles you as much as it dazzled me, and then we can get into a discussion with you guys as to what you think, how fair or unfair the world has been. I do want to start with a disclaimer that my job in this panel is to bring the law of averages of some power-hitting women out here down a bit, because that's what I do. But quick show of hands. Has anyone heard of Henrietta Living? Henrietta Living? The genome that was supposed to cure something. Close. She was an astrophysicist, slightly different stream, but getting there. Yeah. We can combine this by the end of the evening. So the story of Henrietta Living is a remarkable one for the simple reason that most folks don't know who she is. And her contribution to the world and the universe is remarkable. So here's what she did. Henrietta Living in the late 1800s was hired by Dr. Pickering at Harvard. And there was a team of 80 women that he put together. And they were known as the human computer. And what these people did was fascinating. They looked at photographic evidence of what's called Cepheid stars. So they just stared up in the sky, looked at stars, kept plotting it on a piece of glass year after year after year for at least 11 years from what I remember. And then these women literally computed manually by hand the rate of the flicker, extrapolated it to the movement of the stars, and that led to Hubble looking at these things together, and he said, wait a minute, over the last 20 years, these stars have moved apart, which means that the universe is expanding. And the inverse of that is that if it's expanding, and if you contract it, it all started with a bang. That led to the Big Bang. And this was 80 women who worked on this, got zero credit, and the fact that nobody here can name any of them is testimony to the fact that women don't get as much credit as they probably do. I'm going to make the story a little worse. The nickname for these women was Pickering's harem. Dr. Pickering is the guy who picked them, but these women were known as Pickering's harem. So on that note, in your own streams, clearly I'm sure you've dealt with issues where you've been looked down or up purely on account of your gender. Right? I would love to hear your stories of what you had to go through, and it would be great if you can have one personal anecdote of a gender bias, and how do you fight it? It's one thing to read about this in the newspapers, but what would be remarkable is if there's something you can touch upon at a personal level that we can relate to. Any order?
Okay. I don't think necessarily that it's always connected with your profession. There are some issues that women have and will always have. And I think we have to not accept it, but be proud of it, live with it, see how we can work with it. And in 2000, I organized a conference for women in architecture. And 10 years before that, I had tried to organize one when I said I wanted women's work to have an exhibition, but it should be their work. It should not be women who had worked with their fathers or their brothers or their husbands, because that's what happens in architecture. The women always pushed back. And I didn't get any response. But 10 years later, in 2000, when I sent out the same thing, but I made one difference. I said, even if you work with your father, brother, or husband, if the work is yours, you can participate and take part in this exhibition. And things had changed hugely. So change is always happening. And I always look at it as a celebration and not to make excuses. I've been working now 40 years, and I never thought that I'm in a man's profession all the time or that it's a struggle. I think one accepted certain issues and worked within those constraints, because we have advantages too. It's not that we don't have advantages being women, but I know it's not easy. But I do want to say one thing that bothered me. I was on a committee in Delhi, in the Paryavaran Bhavan, which is the Ministry of Environment, and I was on that committee. And I had to fly to Delhi and reach the Paryavaran Bhavan before 10 o'clock. And get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch the flight. And I would reach there, and I would ask, well, where's the women's toilet? And there wasn't a single toilet in that whole building, except in one corner, there was a filthy toilet which was locked up. So this indifference to women's needs is not just at a high level. It works right down. A few years later, I had studied at Smith College, and I got a doctorate there. And one of the other women who was given an honorary doctorate was the first woman at the American Stock Exchange in New York. And she said when she began work, there wasn't even a toilet in the entire building for women. And she had to go out of the building and go to the next building. So there are many, many issues that we have to overcome. But we're strong. And I think if we love what we do with a passion, we keep our integrity and our value systems intact, we will shine always.
Well, mine is, physical.
I have to say that I've never really experienced it, but maybe now when I think about it, maybe it's the way that I was brought up. It never sort of, I didn't look at it through that lens ever. So maybe there have been instances where I have faced that sort of discrimination of male versus female, girl, boy, but maybe I just didn't register it because that's not the way. I've grown up in a family, there's just me and my sister, we're two girls, and we were never made to feel like we cannot accomplish something because we're girls. I started playing badminton at a very young age. Girls and boys traveled together, we played together, we stayed in dormitories together. We had the same issues of like not having toilets or not having water to shower. So the issues in that sense have been the same. Again, maybe if I think of it, maybe the prize money that the guys got was a little more than what the girls get. Today in film, there's no lack of opportunity. Sure, in the kind of films that we've made, maybe say a couple of years ago, and the place of a woman in a film versus how those roles have changed today are very different. And of course the pay, which is again something that, I'd like to speak for myself and say that for myself, I think I've been able to bridge that gap in terms of what my male contemporaries are getting versus what I'm getting paid. There was a recent incident where a director offered us a film and said, creatively I liked it. And then it came to sort of talking about the monies, and I said, okay, so this is what I would charge. And it kind of went back and forth where he came back and said, actually, we won't be able to afford this because we have to accommodate the male, So I said, okay, then tata, goodbye, because I know my track record, I know what I'm worth. I know that his films haven't been doing as well as my films have been doing. So it made absolutely no sense. So I was okay to say no to that film based on that one thing because I just thought it was unfair. And I'm ready today to take those steps or measures or decisions for myself because I'm going to be able to sleep peacefully at night. I don't think I'd be able to live with that sort of thought knowing that I've been a part of a film, had the same sort of creative contribution, or bringing the same sort of value to a film, but being underpaid. I was not okay with that. So I think some of those instances, but I think broadly, I've never been made to feel less or not being able to achieve something because of being a woman.
If I may just say one thing here, since Deepika said that, we did a survey of women and successful women. And I also have just one sister, we're just two girls in the family. And strangely enough, they found where there were only daughters, the confidence level was different than when there were sons as well in those families, at least maybe a generation before. So that's interesting.
That's a great insight. Before we go to Aditi, there's a beautiful research by, there's a beautiful research by Gina Davis about I forget what the technical term is, the extras in the movie. Over a span of about 800 Hollywood films, turns out that 90% of the background extras are male. So to your point of subconscious conditioning as to what one sees on screen and what goes on literally in the background. I thought it was a remarkable statistic which just goes unnoticed. What about you, Aditi?
मैं बताती हूँ discrimination के बारे में. Friends, it is so annoying. No, you know, I tell you, I think it ties in with the, yes, go on. You know, it ties in with what we are sitting here today for, is that stand-up comedy, to a very large extent, is storytelling, is telling the truth about your life and telling sometimes an exaggerated truth about your life. And I realized that, you know, when it came to lineups and stuff, people would be like, oh my God, you're really funny for a woman. I was like, yeah, but it makes you realize that women have to work triply hard for someone to be interested in their story. Like, I know that, like, a fellow comic once came and told me, "Tere ko pata hai na, tere set mein sab sutta marne jate hain." And I was like, really? What do I have to do? What do I have to do to follow up that guy before me who did like a round of terrible jokes, which everyone was like, हाँ, सच्ची, correct, औरत बहुत time लगाती कपड़े पहनने में. So correct, this man is telling some real truths of life out here. And then you go on stage and you're definitely saying things that people have never heard before. And actually that was one of the reasons I got into stand-up, was because I was like, I can't identify a narrative of where the woman is funny and not hideous. Like, you know, like otherwise they would be like, "Arey, why? Pom, 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 pom." And I was like, kyun? Why can't we be owners of our own stories, and why can't we take the center stage not as an object of attraction? I know that like corporate gigs, I still get like, "Arey, female comedian, shakal kaisi hai?" I was like, "Koi nahi pooch raha jokes kaise? Koi nahi pooch raha." And then honestly, I mean, I would like to say, Deepika, that I would have totally been like a Deepika Padukone myself. You know, not even remotely, but I like to eat.
Me too. Oops, I shouldn't be saying me too, but I just asked for samosas and they had none.
I will see you backstage by the snack plate.
With the chutney, mixing with the sweet chutney.
Where is this? Should they just bring these on? Anyway, theek hai, koi baat nahi.
Let's flip it around so that Deepika doesn't get enough time to think this time. And we'll keep it.
I'm very curious to see what these little chits are.
By the way, you guys are being judged. These are on a score of 1 to 10.
Is your wife saying you're terribly boring?
Yeah,
like
that I'm very used to. The secret to my marriage's success, which is 17 years, by
just
the way.
say yes.
Yeah, exactly. Just say yes. Great conversation.
This mantra that all you men think like works. It's not a secret anymore.
My parents had the solution for this. My mom and dad are somewhere here. And I remember once I heard them argue when I was 10 or 12. And dad told my mom that, hey, listen, we're going to solve all the big problems. You guys can solve all the small issues, right? All the fiscal issues, the monetary issues, kids, tuition, education, etc. So my mom asked him, what the hell are you going to solve? And he said, well, us guys will get together and solve the Arab-Israeli conflict, the cure to cancer, which is what men do. Get together, have a couple of beers, talk philosophy. It's the Parisian attitude. You guys do the heavy lifting and get paid less, clearly. Yeah. Well, let's flip it around. So, one of my favorite comedians, Chris Rock, made this comment that we live in a time and age.
I thought he was going to say you.
Yeah, I know. I was going to be like, "Kaun aurat? This me.
After this, you might bump it up a notch and get up to being.
Oh my
favorite.
God! So work here also.
Yeah, absolutely.
and no pay.
Me. So Chris Rock said, we live in a time and age where everything is so politically sensitive that the gig for a stand-up comedian is borderline pushing the envelope between the last bastion of free speech, right, and maintaining that professional ethic. And I can clearly see how lines can get blurred and things get taken out of context, etc. What's your stance on this, being in the profession?
You know, I think actually political correctness is not the biggest danger to comedy. I think that, in fact, we have lived in a world where easy laughs have been derived from too much cruelty. And the fact that we are pushing back, the fact that the world is pushing back and saying this is not okay, that you can't, like if you're hurting somebody, you're perpetuating a very harmful stereotype, be better. And I mean, of course, we're all going to make mistakes on the way. We're all going to do terrible things. And I have said several and done several politically incorrect things that I sorely regret right now. But having said that, you know, the push towards political correctness as the bastion of free speech, I really don't think it's a problem. And the truth is that because a lot of the narrative has been largely male, a lot of the narrative has been कि औरत को time लगता है कपड़े पहनने में, उसको driving नहीं आता है, oh no, wow. I'm like, you know, in Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to drive. So give us some time. Nobody's like, अरे मर्दों को साड़ी नहीं पहननी आती. Give them some time to learn. So it's sort of, you know, I think that, in fact, if anything, you know, not maybe curtailing voices, but giving mics to, or giving stories to people whose stories have not been heard before is going to actually lead us to a more inclusive and empathetic world. And women will actually feel, because I mean, I don't know, maybe like women are more, somebody told me this recently, ki, Aditi, yaar, you know, sometimes you're a lot more cruel in real life than you are on stage. And I was like, you know what, it's true, because I feel terrified to sometimes say some really, really cruel, funny things, which I know my male friends will like gas off with confidence and someone's like throw money at them or whatever. But so I think that when you hear more empathetic stories, when you hear more kind and more inclusive stories, you just have a more empathetic, inclusive, and kind world.
Thanks for that. Deepika's got to run after this. We'll continue the panel, but let me pose a question to you. And a fellow venture capitalist recently wrote about, I don't know if you guys have read this article, about the return of investment on any movie that has been made in 2018 over a budget of 50 crores. Have you read about this? No. It's fascinating. So every movie, this is the last question for Deepika. I'm getting all these cues. In 2018, all the movies...
Guys, like, are we under attack or something?
Yeah, I know. Now you know what I feel like.
Samosa taiyar hai.
So all movies made over a budget of 50 crores. Over. In 2018, there are many data points that were remarkable, including the extremely poor ROI on all movies made by the Khans, but leave that aside. I had to slip it in there. The top 5 movies, purely in terms of return on investments, of the top 5, 4 have been women-centric themes. That's saying something. And do you think this trend will continue, being in the industry? And I think it's pretty awesome that someone ran this analysis.
So,
just to give you numbers, so the return on investments on real estate in India was about 7%. The Khans returned 9%. Women-centric movies, the top 4 out of the 10, or the 5, sorry, returned well north of 25%. Yeah, which is remarkable. Be happy to share this link with you guys, but what do you think of this?
I think it's amazing, and I think, look, I think it's nice for us to say women-centric or female-centric at a moment like this when we're talking about female role models. Having said that, when it comes to creativity, we need to look beyond female or male. It's about the film. If the film didn't work, you know, it's okay. It's a different thing that the films that the Khans didn't work. But say there was a film like Andhadhun that was led by Ayushmann. So I think that it really boils down to the script itself. But yes, I see a trend, which is films that, you're right, films that are being led by women are doing much better. Also, we're in a place today where directors are changing roles. And that's unheard of. You have, if you have a script that sort of has a male protagonist, and suddenly directors are like, 1 second, let me just flip that. Let me just make that a female protagonist, and then go to so-and-so with the film. So you hear of a film that was offered to a male actor like 2-3 years ago, and it's coming back to you now with a female protagonist, is a huge achievement, But as a creative person, I would not like to make this distinction of like, male-led and female-led and all of that. I would just say that I think great content is what is really working right now. And I think a lot of that has to go to the audience. they're ready for that. I don't think it matters today anymore who is in the movie. It really depends on the kind of story that's being told, you know, how well the director's telling that story. You know, so there's a lot of these factors also, I think, that are playing a very, very important role in, you know, in the success of these films.
Sure.
You know, it's not, I don't think you can blindly say, okay, so-and-so's in the film, so let's go and watch it. I think 2018 was a clear sort of,
watershed year.
you know, on that, you know. So you have to sort of, right from the promo, the posters, all of that, I think that the audience has that pulse. I think they know instantly from the minute that first trailer goes out, they know at that very moment whether they want to watch that film or not. Of course, there are films that may not be sort of trending right from the start, but then they release on that weekend and there's that word of mouth that sort of, you know, helps elevate the film. But yes, I think gone are the days when you just had like a big star on a film poster and that film worked.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if you're going to, are you going to kidnap her? Yeah, you're going to kidnap Deepika? Okay.
I don't need my samosas.
So we're going to unveil the book at this point before Deepika leaves, and then get back to the panel. So let's have you guys steal the show. I'm going to step away for a second.
Like a contestant on KBC, yeah. Woo!
Thank you.
Yaar, samosa bhi lakho. Oh, yeah. Can you come forward? Sorry. Lovely evening and thank you.
ओके सो रकुल जी कैसा रहा आपका एक्सपीरियंस हमने देखा कन्वर्सेशन आपने ध्यान से सुना तो आप बताइए आपकी लाइफ का कोई ऐसा इंसिडेंट जब आपको ऐसा लगा कि हाँ मुझे लड़की होना चाहिए या आपके ऊपर कभी किसी ने ऐसा ब्लेम किया एक्टर बनने के लिए नहीं
नहीं, आई थिंक जैसे दीपिका ने कहा दैट वी केम फ्रॉम अ फैमिली जहाँ पर गर्ल एंड बॉय में कोई डिफरेंस नहीं किया गया था. माय पेरेंट्स वर वेरी सपोर्टिव जब मैंने कहा कि मुझे एक्टर बनना है. इनफैक्ट माय मदर गेव अप हर जॉब ताकि वो मेरे साथ एक जगह से दूसरी जगह तक जा सके. ऑफ कोर्स प्रोटेक्टिव थे बिकॉज ये इंडस्ट्री उनको मालूम नहीं थी. तो मुझे अभी भी याद है फर्स्ट मीटिंग पे जाना था तो मॉम एंड डैड बोथ वेंट एंड टुक मी फॉर द फर्स्ट मीटिंग ऑफ माई मॉडलिंग असाइनमेंट. बट मैं लकी थी दैट माई पेरेंट्स वर वेरी वेरी सपोर्टिव. बट हैविंग सेड दैट ये बात हम लोग इग्नोर नहीं कर सकते दैट वर्ल्ड में एक डिफरेंस है. एंड आई थिंक वॉट वी आर कॉन्स्टेंटली वर्किंग टूवर्ड्स एज वीमेन हु आर in a position to is bridge that gap. तो हम हर तरफ से important personalities, चाहे वो actors हों या sports में हों या writers हों, I think their agenda is to give across the power woman definition and yeah, each one of us is trying to do that.
2019 स्टार्ट हो चुका है, हम आपके कौन-कौन से अपकमिंग प्रोजेक्ट देखेंगे?
स्टार्टिंग विद दे दे प्यार दे. दे दे प्यार दे आएगी और अभी मरजावा की शूटिंग चल रही है. सो मरजावा विल बी समवेयर इन अक्टूबर एंड बाकी आई विल अनाउंस समथिंग सून अगैन. देयर सम इंटरेस्टिंग टॉक्स. और तमिल में 3 रिलीजेस हैं. अभी फरवरी में एक रिलीज़ है एंड देन अप्रैल में एक रिलीज़ है एंड एंड ऑफ द ईयर अनदर वन. एंड तेलुगु विल ऑल्सो हैव 2 फिल्म्स.
डेफिनेटली आपका शेड्यूल बहुत ही बिजी जाने वाला है.
हेलो.
क्योंकि आपका शेड्यूल बहुत ही बिजी जाने वाला है, लेकिन दे दे प्यार दे की अगर मैं बात करूँ बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग सब्जेक्ट है. आई थिंक शायद रोमांटिक होने वाली है फिल्म. या आप बताइए कि किस तरह की फिल्म होगी, क्या स्क्रिप्ट होगी और आपका
क्या स्क्रिप्ट होगी?
रोमांटिक होगी, डेफिनेटली रोमांटिक होगी
जी. इट्स अ रोम कॉम. लव रंजन आफ्टर सोनू की टीटू इज प्रोड्यूसिंग दिस फिल्म एंड अकी सर ने डायरेक्ट की है. इट्स अ वेरी न्यू एज रोमांटिक कॉमेडी. मैं ज़्यादा डिटेल्स नहीं बता सकती अभी, बट ऑल आई कैन टेल यू इज़ दैट इट्स गोइंग टू बी एन अमेजिंग फिल्म फॉर एवरी फैमिली, like every age group to watch. तब्बू मैम है उसमें, अजय सर हैं एंड मैं हूँ. अभी वो स्टोरी क्या है मैं नहीं बता सकती, पर बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग है एंड आई एम श्योर पीपल विल लाइक इट.
एक फिल्म आप जहाँ तक हमें पता है कि रिप्राइजिंग रोल ऑफ लेट एक्ट्रेस
श्रीदेवी जी. जी. फर्स्ट पार्ट ऑलरेडी रिलीज़ हो गया है जो अभी रिलीज़ हुआ है लास्ट वीक जनवरी में एंड इट्स गॉट अ वेरी वेरी गुड रिस्पॉन्स. बट बिकॉज माइन इज़ अ स्पेशल अपीयरेंस तो वो दोनों पार्ट्स में 2-3 सीन इधर हैं और थोड़ा बहुत, सो इट्स स्प्लिट बिटवीन बोथ द पार्ट्स एंड वी गॉट अ वेरी गुड रिस्पॉन्स एंड 1 Feb को सेकेंड पार्ट रिलीज़ होगा.
मुझे उसी में ऐड ऑन है कि अभी एक और फिल्म जैसे लोग उनका नाम लेके एक और एक फिल्म रिलीज़ कर दी, आपने सुना होगा उसके बारे में?
जी. श्रीदेवी बंगलो.
ये ठीक लग रहा है मतलब?
सी आई डोंट नो द डिटेल्स ऑफ इट. मैंने भी वही पढ़ा है जो ऑनलाइन ट्विटर पे आता है और आई डोंट थिंक आई शुड कमेंट ऑन इट कि अभी उसमें राइट्स थे या नहीं थे. आप मेरे को उतनी डिटेल्स मालूम नहीं है. सो आई नॉट लाइक टू कमेंट ऑन दैट.
नए साल में आप क्या कर दिखाना चाहेंगे?
जो मैं हर साल करती हूँ, काम और बहुत सारा काम. एंड आई जस्ट होप दैट लोगों को वो काम पसंद आए.